Hi everybody and welcome. We're in my wormery and you might be questioning, what have we here? Well, yep, you guessed it. It's a wide array of different types of food scraps that that might end up being some of what we feed the worms today. You can see it's a wide variety of stuff like banana peels and stuff that was maybe found in the refrigerator to be starting to spoil. Bits and pieces of vegetables that were hacked up and made into salads with little cuttings, and even stuff like leftover rice, which we've recently realized is a pretty popular item in the bins, even leftover noodles. Some little pieces of apple that were chopped up but not consumed and started to go brown. I've got sort of a plan lined up. My plan is depicted in this scribble scratch here on the piece of paper you see. I didn't want to just go about this willy-nilly making it up as I go along. I really do have certain bins, such as my little green bin, that I feel like is at its limit as far as capacity is concerned. So I've made the decision to put that into neglect mode, and so on and so forth. So basically I do have a game plan. You know, I'm always prepared to adapt to changing conditions, so it's not set in stone, but at least I've got a plan. So I'm going to start pulling those bins off the shelf to start feeding. The camera's here to follow along just in case we spot a few worms while we're doing it. Alright, so let's get started. Okay, so what we're going to begin with are the bins that have my finished compost in them. And the only thing that's really occurring at this point is an attempt to lure the remaining worms, or the soon-to-be hatched worms that might still be in their cocoons, out of the material and into these feeding zones that I've established. So to do that, I'm going to just take a peek underneath each of these feeding zones first, just to see if there's a difference. And I don't even see any signs of worms underneath. Here, not much to see, I guess. The only aim is to keep providing a supply of food. Here you can see a couple worms that have started to make their way into these little baiting bins that I created. But I don't want to overturn it or do anything disruptive. I just want to add a little bit more food. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a handful of, I don't even know what this stuff is, some sort of leafy material, and just get them back into service without too much disruption. So that's pretty much it for these two bins. I really didn't want to go overboard on dealing with these. Just a quick reload and press on to the other bin. I get these babies back on the shelf. Okay, next comes the bin which has been referred to as our pumpkin bin, the bin that the pumpkin time lapse that I prepared was filmed in. Now this bin I had labeled on my plan as to get a heavy feeding. See, this is the indicator. This was the stem of the pumpkin, and it's pretty much all that's left of the pumpkin anymore. So, it is behind. While it was doing the time lapse, the bin received no food other than the pumpkin that had been loaded into the bin and time lapse filmed. So I do feel like it's a little bit behind as far as feedings are concerned, and you can also tell just by the volume of material in the bin. The old horizontal migration, or the previous horizontal migration feeding zone, was over here, and we had turned it in the opposite direction using all kinds of really tempting stuff like watermelon, and there was cantaloupe in here as well, so we might end up seeing some scraps of that. Here's the cantaloupe rind as well. Also getting worked pretty good, but still has some fleshy material on it. Just take a peek at how everything is looking down in here. They're definitely making their way into this new feeding zone, that's for sure. Got a nice number of worms in here. Here's some apple, which I have always sort of found to take a while to break down. Various soup greens, parsnip, celery, different things that were used to create a a delicious soup recently. Banana peels are always a popular item, so why don't we give them some of that? And like you'll remember, I said that this is going to be a heavy feeding, so I'm not going to skimp here. I'm just going to load it up with a good heavy-duty amount of food here. The one thing is that this bin is a fairly mature bin, so I don't want to put anything in here that might take very long to break down. So I do want to limit my feeding to things that have a good likelihood of breaking down pretty quickly. I think from this point forward, a more strategic approach to feeding is going to be my approach, and that's going to be meant to ideally minimize the amount of sifting or screening, or hopefully eliminate the need for sifting and screening in the end. So we'll just cover this feeding zone up now. Take a peek just to see how the evacuation of the old feeding zone is progressing. There is going to be obviously scraps and traces of the old food items in the old feeding zone. And it's for that reason I like to try to kind of stir it up so that if any of it's sort of resting on the bottom, it gets out into the material more accessible to more worms. So it's, you know, as you can see, there's still a fair number of worms on that side as well, which is normal. We only swept back, or we only set the new feeding zone last week. You can see the material in this bin is starting to look really nice. Not many large scraps of food over on this side, which is good. Looking good. Let's get this baby back on the shelf. Press on. Now this bin was the one where we, during the last time we checked in on it last week, noticed that in the old feeding zone, I think I remember a corn cob still being in there, and I just left it, and I really should have probably moved it over to the new feeding zone. So before we get into the new feeding zone, I'm going to attempt to salvage any large food chunks that might still be in the old feeding zone and set them over here so that we can really see the old feeding zone wind down and give the worms the incentive to depopulate and move over. There's half of a mango seed. That was a corn cob. The whole idea here is that if there's large chunks of food left in here, just want to move them over and get them out of here. Anything decent sized. So I've been thinking all week, you know, that this is really something I should do next time I get my hands in this bin. So here are two more chestnut shells. Let's see if I can just locate anything else in here before I start setting up the new feeding zone. A little bit of air, a little bit of aeration probably helps a lot as well. It's kind of what I was after here. So I feel a lot better now knowing that, you know, if my new feeding zone is on this side, I don't have that much food remaining on the old side. I have actually considered classifying this bin as one to be sort of neglected. I've heard multiple people refer to sort of letting a bin go for a while and just let all the remaining food get consumed as sort of a neglect approach. I don't know if that's a good word, but it certainly is a good descriptive word. It's sort of not neglect out of forgetfulness or being delinquent in overseeing the well-being of the bin. It's a strategic sort of approach to help things move along in the direction that you're targeting. Now, I do feel little bits down in here. Here, a couple hunks of cantaloupe rind covered in worms, digging in, enjoying the feast. So I'm just going to take those existing chunks of food out as well. Just move them aside so I can, this is a piece of orange peel. Those little sticks. They've really gone through those pieces of melon rind nicely, because even these couple pieces are so thin anymore, and you don't see as much as, look at this one, this is paper thin, this is watermelon rind, just tears apart under its own weight. So this bin is really kicking. I mean, the worms are super active in here. Here too, you can just see chunks where they've gone to town on the food items that are in here. But that's about it. I don't see any more, or I don't sense any more with my fingers. So I think that's where we're at with this. I think it's time to load in a fresh batch of food. If you combine these in progress food items, I'll put them down on the bottom, with what I'm going to add as far as fresh food is concerned, that will kind of amount to a similar quantity of food as what we fed the previous bin. The other reason I had planned on going with a less massive load of food in here is also because of the capacity concerns in terms of this bin being you know, pretty much out of space for much more food. Empty what's remaining in this sack and drop it in there. There's some leaves on the other stuff that we were feeding. So that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and cover up. Level off, cover up. Very nice, but also very full. This right here, this is the bin that we're going to be quote-unquote neglecting, only because it too is near its limit as far as space. And I'm just going to go ahead and use this as my test, the same way others are doing in terms of trying the neglect approach. Now we're down to our two newest bins. This one was established not that long ago, month ago, 5 weeks ago. We had one or two feedings. So it's still being fed in the middle. We haven't really transitioned to horizontal feeding approach. These last two, we're going to be taking just a more run-of-the-mill sort of feeding approach. So we're not going to be transitioning to horizontal feeding here. We're not going to go heavy feeding per se. Whole mango seed, half a mango seed. At one point I had taken a whole boatload of these mango seeds. Actually, they were whole mangoes, and sawed the mango and its seed in half. And they're getting worked down. This was an apple, and it's finally getting worked. It took a long time for the worms to finally make their way into it, but it's finally getting consumed. I'm glad to see that. Now this silly thing is really kind of a thorn in my side, and I don't think I'm going to keep it in the bin anymore. This has been transitioned into this bin from another older bin. It's like a nut or a chestnut or something. But I actually found one similar to it out in the yard. A much smaller one, cracked in half, but you can see it's almost solid wood-like hard substance all the way through, a couple small cavities inside. But I have really no reason to believe that this is going to get worked down anytime soon, so it's just useless to have it in the bin as far as I'm concerned. So I'm taking it out now. It's officially over. The test is done, and this fails. Don't bother. Let's see what we have down here. The worms definitely like being underneath the food supply. So all the juices drip down and it's nice and moist down there. So I'm just taking a quick look-see to how things are progressing down there. This is from the last feeding, piece of orange peel. Smell it. Cantaloupe rind. Getting worked pretty good. Still feel a little meaty portion right there. Alright, I feel like we've taken way more time on this than we had to. I guess I was trying to also find that other experimental object that I knew was in here, which is the cork. And it's in here somewhere, because it too is taking a very long time to break down. And if I don't see some progress on that thing in terms of it breaking down, it might also be disqualified and removed. So let's cover up here, get all these in progress food bits down, back down where it was. I guess cabbage leaves, some of the more outer pieces. Here I don't know what to expect from whole radishes that have started to go bad. So I don't recall ever using radishes in the past, so I'll be curious to see how those progress. These two, I guess they just started to go bad in the refrigerator, so now they're worm food. Now, we've also got stuff like noodles. Give them some noodles. I'm pretty sure the noodles are a popular item. They appear to just vanish when I last fed noodles. So I guess I'll probably expect to see the same results again. I'm sure they won't last long. That's rice. For good measure, a couple banana peels and whatever else is stuck to it. Okay, I'm gonna start moving stuff back over on top. But I do like to reach down there just to feel how things are going over on the edges too. And I guess with the feeding zone being down the middle, kind of makes sense that all the action is in the middle. So the worms are not really paying that much attention to what was loaded into this bin originally on the edges. Very nice. I wonder if I could maybe retain more of the moisture in the bin if I had maybe a more snug-fitting cardboard on top. Whatever. On to the last bin. And by last bin, I actually refer to what's now the newest bin. This newest bin was only established maybe a week ago, week and a half ago, not too long ago. We actually added some stuff recently to this bin. By stuff, I'm referring to the contents of my time-lapse bin that I emptied out in my last video. I always like to see worms at the very surface. I guess maybe there was a benefit to having that cardboard out on the top surface, just by kind of a moisture barrier, keeping the moisture down in the bin. Dry leaves. Those are some of the things that came out of the time-lapse bin. Down here is all of the stuff that came out of the sifting process. All of the large uncomposted chunks of pistachio shells and the shells of chestnuts, all kinds of sticks, everything that got caught in the sieve when I was doing the sifting of my 2 bins that I had most recently harvested, ended up getting dumped into this newest bin as food. So I'm very curious to see how this stuff breaks down over time. It's already had a fair amount of time sitting in one bin, and you know, the pistachio shells are definitely getting soft and crumbly, so I believe that they should start breaking down pretty soon. This is where I think we could probably start throwing back some of this cardboard here, you know? Maybe we can salvage some of these larger pieces and continue to use them as a moisture barrier on the very top of the material. But maybe all of these tinier pieces or these really small scraps can just go right down in here as bedding. All right, so I'm gonna polish off the last of the rice remains. Polish off the last of the noodles. Take this thing that was added to the other bin as well, whatever it was. Some other stuff. Mushroom, another mushroom, some cucumber, another banana peel. Good deal. Go ahead and cover up. We'll just continue to try to use this old cardboard as a sort of a moisture barrier. Maybe there is some value to having this stuff in here like this. This cardboard is going to wick up some of the moisture, but also by having other layers on top, it probably prevents it from escaping so easily. You can definitely tell there's more layers on this one than the other one. Alright everybody, that's it for the day. I'm just going to clean up here, and I usually don't keep the camera rolling for that, so I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks for keeping me company, and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. I always appreciate that, and think about signing up for my channel as well as a subscriber. Ringing the bell will also give you a notification that I've got new content online that you can check out right away instead of stumbling on it later. So that's also appreciated as well. Thanks everyone, have a great day. Bye now.